Okay, so welcome to our day 3 of the library prep for NGS. So today we are going to watch some videos about library prep. So we are going to see how the sonication works. We are going to use a Bioraptor Pico instrument. And then I'm going to show you how the TapeStation works. So I mentioned this instrument multiple times the past 2 days. So it's really, really useful to check the quality of your starting material. So even if it's RNA, DNA, it can check both. And it's really important for the final library check. Then we will move to the library prep itself. And finally, I will tell you how to prepare your sample for the sequencing submission. So this is the detail. Details about, these are the details about the today workshop. So first part is, it will be, oh, no, not RNA. Okay. Okay. Okay, so we are going to work with genomic DNA. So first part is sonication of genomic DNA and quality check using the TapeStation. And then we will have 2 videos. One is about the first part of the library prep with, and especially I want to show you how the bits purification works. So the bits purif, again, we mentioned that multiple times in the past 2 days. So the bits purif is really important for during the library prep. But especially at the end of the library prep, if you have any contaminant in your library, you can remove them using the bits purification. So let's take particular attention to the bits purif, because you probably will need this a lot. Then we will look at the final library at the TapeStation again. So DNA check using the TapeStation. And finally, I will show you how to submit the libraries and how to use the Qubit to measure the concentration of your final library. Okay, so let's start with the Bioraptor and the sonication of the genomic DNA. So the goals for this first part will be learn how to use the Bioraptor, learn how to sonicate the genomic DNA in small fragments, and we will learn how to use the TapeStation, especially the DNA assay, and learn to how to quality check the input DNA. Okay, so here on the left, you have an actual picture of the instrument we have available in the lab. So this is our Bioraptor sonicator. It has 2 components. So we have a water cooler and a water bath. So the sonication happens in the water bath. So the samples need to be inside, like inside the water for the whole time. And the water cooler is important because we want the samples to stay cold. So they need to stay at 4 degrees. We don't want to warm them up because, of course, during the sonication, the temperature tends to increase. So it's really, really important to set the appropriate time on for the instrument and time off. So we need to not to have a too long time on, otherwise we are going to destroy our samples with the heat. And we need to have enough time off to let the instrument to stay at 4 degrees. Okay, so this is a closer look of the instrument from our lab. So this is the water cooler, and the water level needs to be in the safe range. So in between these two small arrows here. And it works with distilled water. So now ultra pure, now purified water, just regular distilled water. So every time we want to use the instrument, we need to turn it on, both the water cooler and the water bath. So this is the water bath, and this all here is where our sample are going to be. And this is the screen where we can set the parameters for our sonication experiment. So every time we want to use the sonicator, we have to set the time on, so in seconds. So for obtain, let's say, fragments of 200 base pair, almost 200 base pair, more or less, 30 seconds on, it's enough. Then we need to allow the instrument to be at least double of the time off. So at least 60 seconds off. And I set that to be 90, but the minimum is 60. So if you do 30 seconds on, minimum time off is 60. And then you can choose how many cycles you want the instrument to be on and off. So I set this to 15. So 15 cycles, 30 seconds on, 90 seconds off is enough for obtaining fragments of 200 base pair starting from genomic DNA. So once everything is ready, you can just press the green button, so the play button, and the instrument will start sonicating your sample. So here is how you're going to insert your sample. So this is the samples and handler. So we are going to have a better look at how to insert the samples in the sonicator in the video. I'm going to share with you in a bit. And once the run is over, you will know that from the screen. So just say run over, okay? Okay, so I'm going to share the first video with you about the sonication. So it's just images. I decided not to have the audio. So I tried that, but the was really awful. Like, so it's just images, and I'm gonna comment live. Okay. Okay. First video. Okay. So please let me know in the chat if you have any trouble with the video. Okay, so this is the instrument in our lab. It's available to use. So if you need the instrument, just let me know. So the switch on button on the water bed is on the back right of the instrument, and then the on-off button of the cooler bed is on the front, okay? So for the first part of the protocol, we only need the genomic DNA. So the genomic DNA I used was lambda DNA, concentrated 300 nanogram per microliter. And we need water to dilute the genomic DNA. So the Bioraptor works with these specific tubes. So except for the instrument itself, the only consumables you need is just the tubes. So this, we have the samples handler for 0.2 ml tube or 0.1, so smaller tubes, okay? We usually work with 0.2 ml tubes. Okay, so this is the sample holder. So it works like, okay, you just push and pull, and you can open it, and it can take up to 16 samples. And this is the adapter for the smallest tube. So then once, so this is the sample I prepare. So this is the genomic DNA I want to sonicate. And even if I have only one sample, you need to fill all the spots in the sample holder. So we have tubes with same amount, same volume. So I prepared 50 microliter of DNA solution. So all the tubes have 50 microliter. So then you just close the sample holder. And then it's going to be insert in the water bath like this. So once we set up all the parameters, we can just push the green button and close. And the instrument will run by itself. We don't need to do anything else. It's quite easy to use. So once the run is done, we need just to remove the samples. More faster, and it's just me removing all the balances and the tube, and you can just clean everything, and that's it. Okay, so the Bioraptor is really easy to use, and you just need to switch off everything once you're done. Okay. So I recorded this video also like tutorials for the instrument, but as you can see, it's really easy to use, and you're welcome to use the instrument if you need to sonicate your samples. So it can be DNA or even, you know, cells or tissue. It depends on your experiment. Okay, so once we have the genomic DNA, once we have sonicated our genomic DNA, we need to check the size. So now we need to check if the sonication worked. So I'm gonna, so let's go back to the slide first, because I want to show you some more details about the TapeStation before watching the video. Okay. So this is the Agilent 4200 TapeStation system. Even this instrument is available to use in our lab as long as you provide your own reagents and consumables. I mean, the instrument itself is available for who wants to just check the RNA or DNA. Just write to me, and we also have a more detailed video tutorial. So if you are interested in using the instrument, I can share the video, the tutorial with you, or you can write me and we can schedule an in-person training if you want, if you don't feel comfortable in using the machine only after watching the video. And we have a Google Calendar that we use to schedule the run. Okay, so these are all the available as assay for the TapeStation. So we have the D1000 screen tape that can check the DNA up to 1 kilobase. So this one works perfectly with the final libraries. And we have the high sensitivity available or the regular D1000. So high sensitivity, it's just more accurate for low concentrated samples. And okay, so the picture is about the protocol for each specific assay. So D1000, high sensitivity, you need to use 2 microliter of your DNA or ladder and 2 microliter of the sample buffer, mix everything in TapeStation specific tubes, vortex for 1 minute, spin down, and then load into the machine. For the D1000 regular assay, that is the one that we are going to use for the sonicated DNA. We need only 1 microliter of the sonicated genomic DNA and 3 microliter of buffer, vortex 1 minute, spin down, and load. Then we also have the genomic DNA available. So if we want to check the integrity of our genomic DNA, so as you probably will remember from day 1, if you want to check the DNA integrity number, you're going to use the genomic DNA that can check DNA up to 60 kilobase. And you can check the integrity because maybe you want to run a 3rd generation sequencing experiment, so you need a genomic DNA to be good in quality, okay? Then we have still for DNA, we have the D5000. So you can check DNA up to 5 kilobases. So this is not the one you want to use for final libraries because you don't need the up to 5 kilobases range. The library are usually average size is 300, 400 base pair, so you don't need to go up to 5 kilobases. Again, we have the high sensitivity and regular one. This is something you can probably use, let's say, if you don't know the exact parameters you want to use during your sonication. So you are trying different parameters. So you can use the D5000 to check how much of your, let's say, DNA is actually fragmented at the size you want, and how much of your DNA is not at the correct size range. Okay, so you need to look up to 5 kilobases. And then we have the RNA too. So we can check the RNA as well at the TapeStation. And even for RNA, we have the high sensitivity and the regular R1. So if your RNA is low input, you need to check with the high sensitivity assay. The main difference between the protocol for DNA and RNA is that the RNA, after vortex 1 minute and spin it down, you need to eat the sample at 72 degrees for 3 minutes, okay? And then put the samples on ice, and after that, they are ready to be loaded to the instrument. So do you have any idea why we need to eat the sample at 72 degrees? Any guess? No? Okay, RNA needs to be eat at 72 degrees because, as you probably know, RNA is single strand and can create, let's say, 3D structure. So it can fold and create this 3D structure. So it won't migrate into the gel as the DNA does. So we eat at 72 degrees to break any structure the RNA created, so it will run into the gel better, right? Okay, so here is there is a list of all the TapeStation reagents you need for each specific assay. Okay, so we don't need to go in detail on this, but I want just to give you the list. So if you will ever use the TapeStation, you already have the catalog numbers for each assay. Okay, so what do we need to run the TapeStation? We need the tips specific for the instrument. We need tubes and caps, again, specific for the instrument, and we need the sample buffer, the brown tube. We could use the ladder. So ladder is optional for DNA 1000 RNA, but it's recommended for D5000 and genomics. So instead of the actual ladder, to save one lane on your TapeStation gel, you can just use the option of the electronic ladder. So let's say that the electronic ladder for both RNA and the D1000 is pretty accurate, while for the genomic DNA and D5000 is usually not that accurate. So that's why it's better to run your own ladder instead of using the electronic ladder. So this is our screen tape. So our gel looks like. Okay. So it's just this thin gel, and the gel is actually, so each lane is like this one, like you have 16 lanes, so you can run up to 16 samples in one screen tape. And you have all those tiny lanes of gel, okay? Which kind of gel is not agarose, and of course they don't tell you the composition, the exact composition of the gel, okay? Okay, so here is a picture of the inside part of the instrument. So we have this part here is for loading your tubes. If you have up to 16 samples, here is for loading the tips. And this part here is where the screen tape goes, okay? And this one here is just for where the instrument put the used tips. But if you want to run more than 16 samples, you also have the option of the plate. So you can actually run up to 96 samples together. And what you need to do is to insert the first of your screen tapes here and any additional screen tapes in this region here. And the instrument is going to do everything for you, okay? Okay, so let's take a look at the video now. Maybe it will be easier to understand how the instrument works. Okay. So take this after it. Okay, as usual, let me know if you have any issue with the video. Okay, so here I have all the consumable I need, so tips, tubes, caps, screen tape, ladder, and reagent, and my sample, of course. Okay, so first of all, we need to prepare the samples inside the tube, and we have these specific tubes. So do not please use these other PCR tubes. You need to have the TapeStation specific tubes. Okay, so it's going to be 3 microliter of the sample buffer for the D1000 regular DNA assay, and only 1 microliter of your sample. So that's the advantage, one of the advantages of using the TapeStation. So you don't need to load your sample entirely on an agarose jar to check it. You just need 1 microliter and keep the rest. You can keep the rest. Okay. Okay. And then once you close the tubes with the specific caps, compatible caps, okay, spin it down, and then vortex. Okay. So we have this vortex that comes with the instrument, so it's already set to vortex for 1 minute at 2000 RPM. Okay. And as you can see, so I just put 1 strip tube, but you can even vortex the entire 96 well plate on this vortex. Okay, so I'm just waiting. Okay, let's go ahead. I'm just waiting. Okay, for the vortex to finish. 1 minute. Almost done again. No, done. Okay, then vortex again, and make sure once you uncap the tubes, you always need to make sure that you don't have any drop on the tube wall. And then we open the instrument, and this is the samples folder for strip tubes. Okay? So you can put up to 2 strip tubes in there. If you have more than 16 samples, you can use the plate. Or you can run the strip tubes twice if you don't want to use the plate. Okay, this is our screen tape. And each screen tape has a QR code. The QR code is facing back. So the QR code is important because the instrument is going to record the QR code. So it will tell you if you are already used the tape and how many lanes you have available, how many of them have been used before. Okay, so we have tubes and we have tips, the screen tape. So we are ready to start the run. As you can see, we have a computer connected with the instrument. Okay, so these two are the 2 programs we need to run the TapeStation. So the TapeStation software is the first one that we need to open. And the TapeStation analyzer is the one that analyzes the results. Okay, so this is how the TapeStation software looks once you open it. So I selected the first well, and I asked the instrument to run the electronic ladder. Okay, so as you can see here, so the instrument is giving you an image of your screen tape. Okay, so the dark gray lanes are the ones that have been used before. The light gray are the available lanes. So I was using a already open screen here. So the instrument is letting me know that I have 3 lanes available. Okay. And I'm going to run 1 sample. So I required for the run is just 1 tip. Okay. Then it's just proceed. And the instrument starts, and we don't need to do anything else, just waiting for the run to finish. And it's really quick. Let's just go ahead. So the instrument is checking like the status first, and then it's going to pipette the tips. Okay, so 1 sample, just 1 minute. Okay. So once the run is done, the instrument is going to analyze the results, and the Agilent TapeStation software will pop up. And this is our results. So right now, it looks like we don't have anything in there because this is the electronic ladder, and this is our sample. It's actually not true. So first of all, we need to scale to sample. So I just push the button scale to sample. So now we can see the result of the sonication here. Okay. So this is the gel picture, but then we can also move to the electropherogram to take a better look at the peak. So as you can see here, you can adjust like the area of the peak, but anyway, our peak is at 255. So it's actually the size we were expecting to see after the sonication and the parameters we use. So once you are satisfied with your results, you can even create a report and export your data in a PDF format. So I'm just giving a name to the file, and you can save it under reports on the TapeStation computer as a PDF file, and you will have a preview of the file here. So the report is in the first page has the gel and the concentration. So it's giving you the TapeStation is also giving you a concentration. However, we don't usually rely on the TapeStation concentration. We usually anyway measure everything with the Qubit. Qubit is more accurate than the TapeStation. And we ask all the users to save the results on their own box. Okay, so as with UCLA, you should have access to UCLA logon ID and a box space. So once you open your box, you can just drag the PDF file and save it on your own box, or I mean, you can organize your box as you want. I have a TapeStation folder in my box. Okay. Yeah, you probably used box before, so you know how to do that. Under reports, you can find your file and you can just drop it. The file. Okay. Okay, any question on sonication or TapeStation so far? No? Okay, so let's move to the library prep part. So we are going, I'm going to show you how this QuantaBio library prep work. So QuantaBio has this PAR-Q kit. So the kit has two versions. So one, it's starting from the A-tailing and end repair and A-tailing. So the one I'm gonna show you today. But the the kit also has a version with the fragmentation step. So you can actually, instead of using the sonicator, you can perform your enzymatic digestion, okay? But since we already fragmented the DNA with the sonicator, we don't need the fragmentation step, but we can just go ahead with the end repair and a tailing that is called DNA polishing in this kit. And the DNA polishing takes 60 minutes, more or less. Of course, I'm not showing you a 60, like a 2.5-hour video, because the good of having this class via Zoom is that we can, skip the waiting. Otherwise, each incubation, the first one is 16 minutes. Then we have the adapter ligation, that's quite fast, 15 minutes. And then we have the first cleanup. So after the first 2 steps, we are going to isolate the DNA, and the cleanup takes more or less 25 minutes. And then we have the final library amplification. And after the PCR, another cleanup. Okay, so 2 purifications. Of course, I'm gonna show you the purification once. There is no sense, no sense of showing like the same video twice. So that's why, that's the pro of having this class via Zoom. So the goals of the library prep part are, of course, prepare the library, learn how to prepare the library, and learn how to use the impure beads for purification, okay? So impure is just one brand of beads, but there are so many different beads available, spry beads, impure, and even, this Quanta Bio has its own beads, and NEB has its own beads. But doesn't really matter which beads are you going to use. They are quite similar, and they are all efficient. So the main difference actually is that impure beads, they usually are stored at 4 degrees. So if you use impure beads, you need to take them out and let them reach the room temperature before using them. So the beads, they need to be resuspended and at room temperature. If you use spry beads, they are at room temperature already. So you only need to resuspend them, and the resuspension part is really, really important. So beads, they need to be perfectly resuspended, because as I told you yesterday, the ratio between the DNA and the beads, it's important, really extremely important, because depending on the ratio between your DNA and the beads, you are going to catch a specific DNA size, okay? So if you don't have enough beads in your mixture, you can probably lose some of your sample. If you have too many beads in your tubes, you probably will retain some of the contaminants. So you don't want that. And you want the beads to be well resuspended, okay? Okay, so before moving to the video, I think this one will be the longest video for today. It's not that long, don't worry, not hours of video. So maybe we can have a break now, and so we can have a break and start again at 2:30 with the library breakfast. Okay. And here, if you have any questions, please ask. Okay. Okay. So on the left, we have a picture of the tubes, the components coming from the kit. So they, of course, all the tubes are labeled, but the kit, they usually use even a color code to separate the tubes that you need to use for each step. So for the end polishing step, that means end repair and A-tailing, we have these two tubes, buffer plus enzyme mix. Then we have our lambda sonicated genomic DNA, the one that we just made with the Bioraptor. And then the second step will be the adapter ligation. Again, we have two tubes, so the ligation buffer and the ligase. And we need to provide the adapters separately. So usually adapters, they do not come with the kit. Usually, sometimes yes, but they usually don't. And this is because I talk about the adapters and the combinatorial or unique adapter strategy yesterday. So they can be, you can use a combination of adapter. You can use unique dual adapter. You can even use just one index, no? So two adapters, but just one index. So I mean, you have to choose which one you want to use. So they don't tell you. So the indexing strategy, it's yours. So you have to buy them separately usually. So here I'm gonna use adapters from NEB, and they are actually unique dual indices plus UMI. And the hard 10 micromolar, that's the concentration. And concentration is important because the concentration of the adapters will be related to the concentration of your input material. So since we don't want to have adapter dimers, we don't want to put a huge amount of adapters during the ligation, too large extra amount of adapters. Otherwise, we will probably have adapters dimer. So that's why it's important to know the concentration of the adapters. Then we will have the first purification, followed by the PCR amplification. So PCR amplification, it's introducing bias. So we don't want to perform too many PCR cycles here. And the PCR cycles that the kit suggests are usually based on the input amount of DNA you're using. So if you use 1 microgram of your DNA, you don't probably need to perform any PCR. If you use 500 nanogram, as we are about to do, 500 nanogram maybe requires a couple of PCR cycles, okay? And then after the PCR, you need another bit purify. So in the video I'm going to share with you in a bit, I prepared two reactions. One with the accurate amount of adapter compared to my input sample. And in the second one, I pushed the formation of adapter dimers just to show you how it looks like at the TapeStation at the end. And also the bit theory will change because in order to keep the adapter dimers we created, we are going to increase the amount of bits, okay, in both purifications. Okay. I'm gonna share the next video. Yeah. Okay. Okay. So these are the key components, the three reactions we are going to perform, and this is our lambda DNA. And that's the protocol. I put the protocol on the shared folder in Google Drive, so you will find like the details in the protocol there, and that's available. Okay, so this is the volumes of the reaction itself. So how much buffer DNA and the enzyme we are going to mix together. And here you can see the thermocycler option we are going to set. So 20 degree 30 minutes. This is the temperature for the end repair enzyme. So the optimal temperature for the end repair enzyme, while 65 degrees is for the polymerase that is going to add the overhang, the A overhang, okay? So that's why it's two steps, and each step is taking 30 minutes. And so I'm gonna take, these are PCR tubes, always use nuclease-free tubes and caps. And if you're working with DNA, you can just clean up your bench with ethanol, that's fine. If you are working with RNA, you need to be extra careful. So you need to use a specific detergent like RNase away or stuff like that to keep your bench clean. So this is the genomic DNA. So I'm creating two mixture, two reactions. One is going to be our standard protocol. The other one will be the protocol to create adapter dimer. Okay. Okay, so that's the water, nuclease-free water. Of course, everything tubes water needs to be nuclease-free, and you need to use molecular grade tips. That means barrier tips as you should do for qPCR. So please don't use regular tips. You need the barrier one. You see the white thing, the white membrane, like in the tip. So that's the barrier tip. Otherwise, you are going to cross-contaminate everything. So it's really extremely important to use barrier tip. Okay, always put for buffer first, and enzyme will be the last. Okay, so here, just to show you all the components we have, I put everything in ice. Of course, you always have to work with ice, but enzymes, I strongly recommend to just take them before using them and then put them back. Okay, so don't keep the enzymes in ice forever. Okay, they are really they are the reagent that is doing the job. So the enzyme is doing the job. So please be careful with the enzymes. Okay, so if you ever use a thermocycler and you know how to set it up, it's not that hard. The instrument we have in the lab is touchscreen. So the parameter on the top are the temperature, and on the bottom you have the time. So it's quite easy to set it up. Okay, so once everything is ready, usually I just, mix them with the pipette. Please, if you have enzyme in your mixture, it's always better not to vortex the mixture and then spin everything down and load the samples. Okay, and start. Okay, so of course we are not going to wait for 16 minutes, and we can already move to the ligation step here. Okay, so let's take a look at the ligation and it's good. Okay, so adapter ligation. That's the amount of adapter we need for the standard protocol. But we are going to, push the formation of adapter dimers in our second mixture. Okay, so about the ligase, be careful with the ligation buffer here, because usually, so the ligation buffer, it's really viscous. So you need to pipe it up and down carefully, and you need to be extremely careful about the volumes here. Okay, otherwise your adapter ligation won't be efficient. And as you know, from day one, the adapters are extremely important in NGS experiment. Okay. And the incubation is 20 degrees and 15 minutes. So it's quite fast. So ligase, it really works at low temperature. So you usually set the lid of your thermocycler to be off, or you can even leave the lid open, okay? So it's better not to even close the lid if it's off from the previous step of your protocol, because the ligation is really temperature sensitive. So if it's 20 degrees, it needs to stay at 20 degrees, okay? Okay, so here, let's move. I'm just pipetting the ligation buffer first, okay? So as usual, buffer first, enzyme last. Now, actually, this is not the ligation buffer. First of all, I'm pipetting the adapters, okay? So this is an extremely important step. So you have to be extremely careful while adding the adapters, because of course, remember, the adapters, they, especially, okay, so these adapters, they already contain the index, okay? So you are specifically labeling your sample. So you need to be careful to add the exact index to the sample and not mixing them, okay? So adapter first, then you can add the ligation buffer. Okay, about the buffer, you can vortex and spin them. Buffer, we don't care, like we can vortex the buffer, it's just a buffer, not an enzyme, so it's totally fine. Always remember to pipette up and down, and I'm doing that carefully with the ligation buffer because as I told you, it's viscous, so you want to resist everything nicely. Next, the enzyme. Okay. Pipette up and down. That's water. Okay, so once it's done, okay, so what I usually do when I already have the enzyme in my mixture is to use my finger like this to just tap, okay? So instead of vortexing, but because it's extremely, aggressive to vortexing, you can tap with your fingers, okay? Then spin it down. It's 20 degrees, so I didn't preheat the machine for anything else you need to preheat. So when the temperature is high temperature, like 60 degrees or more, you need to preheat the thermocycle before inserting your samples. Okay, so I'm leaving the lid open, okay, because it's 20 degrees. I was performing the A-tailing before, that was 60 degrees, so the lid is still hot. So during the ligation, be careful. The lid needs to be off, or you can leave it open. Okay, so let's move. After the ligation is done, it's just 15 minutes. We can move to the first period. Okay, so these are the parameters. So our first period will be at 0.8x period. So means 0.8 volumes of bits. So our ligation mixture was 50 microliters, so it's going to be 40 of bits. But because we want to retain the adapter dimers in the second reaction, we are going to use 90. Okay, so 1.8 volume of bits. Okay. Okay, so what we need now is a magnet. We have different type of magnet. This is a magnet for a 96 well plate. So if you're working with lots of samples, it's a good choice. This is the magnet for the strip tubes. And this is the magnet for the appendix tubes, okay? I'm gonna use the appendix tubes just to show you the bead series more clearly. And showing the bead spirit in the strip tubes with the strip tubes magnets is not easy. So I choose to move to the appendix tubes, but usually you don't need to. You can use the strip tubes magnets. And moving all the samples to the appendix tube is just an extra step. And you don't want to waste time doing that. Okay, so I just transfer my sample to the appendix tubes. And now I'm gonna add the beads, okay? Well, we suspended beads. They look like this, so it's where we suspended versus not resuspended. So see, if it's same color like this, it's resuspended. Here you have a brownish thing on the bottom. That's the beads. The beads, they have their own specific weight. So with time, they tend to collect at bottom, and you have the buffer on top. Okay. So like this. All of them on the bottom of the tube. So we're going to use the resuspended one, of course. Okay. Okay. So now pipette up and down carefully. You have to mix your sample with the beads really, really careful. I'm adding the beads to the second tube now. Up and down. Okay. Then you can even vortex them to really mix them. Vortex, spin 10 seconds. And now we have 10 minutes incubation at room temperature. Okay, so during the 10 minutes incubation, we allow the beads to capture the DNA. Okay, so it takes 10 minutes room temperature. So after 10 minutes, what we need to do is just transfer the beads to the magnet, the tubes, sorry, to the magnets, okay? Like this, and wait 5 minutes, okay? 5. Just wait for the magnet to capture the beads, and beads separate from the buffer. Okay. Minutes. Okay. Now now they are separated. So it's not easy to see that they are separated from this perspective. So I decided to open. Anyway, I have to open the tube. So I open. And maybe you can see them now. Okay, so the beads are on the back wall of the Eppendorf tube, and in the front part you only have the buffer. So they are now, you know, there's just that spot, dark spot with the beads. They are actually separated from the buffer. So what we are going to do is remove everything that is not beads. So all the buffer, we don't need it anymore. And like for removing the buffer now, I'm using the tips because the palette, the beads palette is still, let's say, soft. So if you use a vacuum, you will probably lose some beads. So it's better to use the tips at this step, okay? Okay, so now, as you can see, I don't have the buffer anymore. I just have the beads still attached to the wall of my tubes. And now we are going to wash the beads with 80% ethanol, fresh ethanol, freshly prepared ethanol. Okay, you always have to prepare your 80% ethanol just for your experiment. So it needs to be fresh, okay? New. 30 seconds. So I just put the ethanol, wait 30 seconds, and then now we can remove the ethanol with the vacuum, okay? So just like this. Okay. So just removing all the ethanol and performing a second wash. So the bead needs to be washed twice. Second wash works exactly the same. You put ethanol, wait 30 seconds. And then you can remove the ethanol. Of course, without touching the beads. So if the beads are on the bottom wall of your tube, just stay on the top, on the front one, okay? Okay, I'm just removing the extra ethanol here. So be sure to remove any leftover of ethanol. We don't want to have any ethanol in the tubes. And now, next step is to wait 5 minutes to and let the beads air dry. Okay, so lid open, air dry for 5 minutes. So always check your beads. If they looks already dry even before 5 minutes, just proceed with the elution because you don't want to over dry your beads. If the beads are over dried, means that they are really they become light brown and you start to see some cracks on the palette. When you are going to resuspend your DNA, you are going to probably lose some. because of the overdry. So always check how the drying part is going. But at the same time, make sure that you don't have any ethanol left. So once the beads are ready, so dry, you can add the elution buffer. So the EB or elution buffer is just 3pH8, usually 3pH8. So you can just add the elution buffer by pipetting up and down to perfectly resuspend the beads. So as you can see, there is still some pellets, so I want to resuspend everything. I don't have any pellets anymore, so you can again vortex spin. Okay, and you can wait 3 minutes to let the DNA elute from the beads. This is the elution part. So now we are using the elution buffer to let the DNA detach from the beads. So the DNA now is going to be in our elution buffer, not on the beads anymore. Next, we are going to put the tubes on the magnet, 3 minutes. Again, see, we have separation here. So beads now are on the wall again. Right, we have the small pellet on the back wall of the tubes. But this time we are going to collect the buffer and take it for the next step because it contains the DNA now, okay? So we don't want the beads anymore, but we want to recollect our DNA. Okay, so if I put, let's say, 20 microliter of buffer, of elution buffer, I usually collect 18. So I usually just leave 2 extra microliter in the tubes, just because it's also important not to take any of the beads. Okay, so I prefer not to just to leave a couple of microliters, but try not to have some beads carry over, okay? The last step in our library prep will be the PCR amplification. Okay, so that's the reaction for the last step, PCR. Okay, so high Fi PCR stands for high fidelity. So it's a specific PCR that's usually accurate. It's extremely accurate, okay? And it's 50 microliter volume, and that's the how to set the thermocycle for the PCR reaction. So as you can notice, this polymerase is hot start. So we need to eat the mixture at 98 degrees, okay? And we are going to perform just a couple of cycles because we use 500 nanograms, so it's quite a lot of DNA. So we don't need to perform too many PCR. And how to choose how many cycles to perform? So usually the kit comes with a manual and a table that suggests you how many cycles to perform depending on your starting material. So for 500 nanogram, the protocol says 1 to 2 couple of cycles, okay? Okay, so we have the two components for this reaction are the PCR mix and the primers. Primers, mixing everything up and down with the pipette and cups. Sucking vertex, spinning down. Okay. So now the thermocycler, before inserting your sample, make sure that the thermocycler is ready. That means that it's at 98. Okay, it needs to be preheat since we are working at 98 degrees. Okay, and just wait. So after the PCR, there is another bead spirit that it's same as before, just different volumes of beads. So there is nothing new to see. Any question on the library track? No? Bead spirit? No? Okay, so let's move to the part 3. No, okay. Okay, part 3, library track part 2. We have to now check how our final library looks like. If it's clean, if we have any contaminants. So the goals for this part is to learn how to use the TapeStation to check the final library and assess the quality of a final library and its average size, okay? Let's move to the video. Okay, so we are back to the TapeStation. Okay, so I'm removing the tubes from before. I wanted to show you, okay, this is where the instrument put the used tips. So I'm removing the tips now. And the screen tape still has some available lanes. So if the screen tape is to discard, the instrument put the screen tape, move the screen tape on the left side. Okay? Since this screen tape was still in the screen tape spot, means that you still have some available lanes. So you can just put it back in the fridge and use it later, okay? So you don't need to use the screen tape entirely in one run. You can keep it for future run. Once you open your screen tape they suggest, Agilent suggests you to use it in 2 weeks, I think. But I mean, we have used expired, let's call them expired the screen tapes before, and I mean, especially for DNA, I mean, it's still good. You don't need to discard them after 2 weeks. Okay. Okay, so of course, I didn't prepare the samples during the video because we already watched how to prepare the samples in the previous video. So it's still P1000, so it's saying 1 microliter of sample, 3 microliter of buffer, vortexing, spinning down, loading. So same exact protocol. We are just taking a look at the results here. Okay, so this is how a contaminated sample looks like, okay? So you have your final library and you have this peak here, 163. These are adapter dimers because primers dimer, they are usually below 100 in size. So 163 is adapter dimers for sure. And you can see quite a nice and huge peak here. So there is a lot of contamination and we need to clean them for sure. See how much contamination we have. Okay, so let's move to, okay. So when we have contamination in our sample, I told you yesterday, it's better to have less than 1%. So here it's quite obvious that we have some contamination. There is no reason why to, just check, oh, what's the percentage? It's for sure more than 100%, but I just want to let you know that you can anyway check the exact percentage of your contaminants using the region option in the TapeStation. So thanks to the region option, you can set up these colored areas here. And you can actually, okay, with edit regions or region setting both work. You can set up the size of the highlighted range. So here I have from 180 base pair to 1000, it's my library. From 60 to 170 dimers. So both PCR and adapter dimers. While 60 from 1000 is the entire sample. Okay. So I can apply these regions to my samples and take a look at the concentration, molarity, and percentage, okay? So here we have dimers, it's 7%, right? So more than 1 for sure. Okay. So I can use the region option to check how much. So this is 138. Okay. So this picture is showing you how clean library prep looks like. So we don't have any contamination here. In the second one, we have some, okay? But thanks to the region option, we can see that it's 0.6%, so it's less than 1. So we can even leave the contaminants as they are, okay? Zero point 0.68. Fine. Okay. Oh, oh. Okay. So any question on the library checking part? No? Okay. So this is the final step in the library prep. We have the library prep submission. So I'm gonna show you how to quantify your libraries and how to calculate the molarity and prepare them for sequencing. Okay, okay, so let's introduce the qubit now. So this is the final instrument we are going to use for the protocol today. Okay, so the qubit is the fluorometer we can use for quantifying DNA, RNA, even protein. And that's alternative to the nanodrop. However, I just want to say again that the nanodrop is also giving you the information about the contaminants in your RNA DNA extraction. So if you have any protein or any other buffer inside your mixture, the nanodrop will tell you. Well, the qubit is just giving you the measurement, the concentration, not the quality, okay? How pure is your DNA or RNA. Okay, so when you want to use the qubit, so the qubit is this small instrument here. It's quite small, easy to use. This is I think is the first version. So there is an updated version that can also read microRNA concentration. And I think the latest version has strip tubes. So here you can measure one sample at a time. In the newest version, you can read 8 samples at the same, 8 samples in one single run each time. So it's, if you have hundreds of samples, it's better not to read everything one by one. So what you need to prepare is a working solution. The qubit working solution is made with qubit buffer and qubit reagent. Okay, qubit buffer, it's an aqueous solution. It's just a buffer. Qubit reagent, it's light sensitive and it's usually colored, okay? So the ratio is 199 microliter, that's for one reaction. So one reaction is 199 microliter of the qubit buffer and 1 microliter of the qubit reagent. So to prepare your working solution means that you have to multiply this volume for the number of samples you are going to measure, okay? Plus number of samples plus number of standards. So every time the qubit is going to record the standards measurement, so you can choose to use the previous standards or you can make your own measurements. I strongly recommend you to always prepare the standards and measure them for each run, okay? So final, once you have your working solution, you are going to aliquot the solution in the qubit tubes. The qubit has its own specific tubes. Please use this tubes specific for qubits because they are the only one compatible with the instrument. So final volume in each tube is always 200. So for the standards, you need 190 microliter of the working solution plus 10 microliter of the standards. For each assay, so even qubit has DNA, broad range and high sensitivity, RNA, broad range, high sensitivity. For each assay, the qubit has 2 standards. So you will have standard 1, standard 2, and you need 10 microliter for each of them. About your own samples, you can decide the volume you want to measure. So it's from 1, so you can use just 1 microliter of your sample up to 20. Of course, it depends on how precious is your sample. So 20 microliter is quite a lot. So if you are measuring RNA or DNA, I would say that 2 microliter is accurate enough. Maybe 1, it's quite borderline. I mean, maybe you can make some mistakes by pipetting just 1. Maybe you will pipette less than 1, but 2, it's okay. Okay, so 2, it's safe. So if you are measuring 2, you just need to put 198 microliter of your working solution in each tube and 2 microliter of each sample, okay? Okay, so the qubit measurement. Video. Okay, so that's the qubit. That's a buffer for double-strand DNA BR. So it's the one we need for our funnel library. And these are the standards, right? I'm going to prepare the working solution in the appender tube. And then we have the small tubes are the Qubit assay tubes. That's the reagent. Buffer plus reagent and vortex and pin down, and we can aliquot the working solution in each assay tube. So it's going to be 190 for the two standards. That's a fixed protocol. So first, the standards is always 10 microliter. For your own sample, you can decide, and I'm measuring 2 microliters. Okay. So 198 of the working solution. Okay, then 10 microliter of standard one, number one. Then of standard two. And 2 microliters of my sample. I have 2 tubes because I prepared 2 libraries, the one with adapter timers and the standard one. Okay. Then you can vortex your tubes and wait 1 minute before reading the tubes at the Qubit. So you can plug it in. Okay, so this is like all the assay you have: DNA, RNA, protein, and you also have like single-strand DNA, double-strand DNA. So question, why do we have, for DNA, we have double-strand DNA broad range, double-strand DNA high sensitivity, and we have single-strand DNA. So what's the single-strand DNA for? Any guess? What you are measuring with the single-strand DNA, say primers. If they are primer, they are single-strand DNA. Okay, first question is the instrument is going to ask you is, do you want to measure new standards, or do you want me to use the old one, the like previous one? And as I told you, I prefer and I strongly recommend to read the standards at the time. let's say. So you just need to insert the tube and push read, right? So this dot here is our standard one measurement, right? So we can put the second tube and push read. Okay, so this is our standard curve, okay? So this is our reference for our sample measurements. Okay. So next, you can just insert the first sample tube and push read. That's done. And you can, so it's giving you the concentration in microgram per ml. So you can adjust the calculation. So calculate your stock concentration. So first of all, you need to tell the machine how many microliter you used. So I pushed like 2. So I selected 2 microliter. It's not easy to see, but this is 1, this is 3. I selected 2. And then you can adjust the concentration. So I selected nanogram per microliter. So it's giving me the stock concentration of my sample, 37, okay? Okay. Then you can read your next sample, same, stock concentration, there you go. So first sample was 37, second sample was 57, but we already know that the second sample contains dimers. So we need to remove the adapter dimers first and then adjust the concentration for the adapter dimers presence, okay? Okay, done. Once you're done, you can just unplug the instrument. That's it. It's quite easy to use. Okay. Any question on the Qubit? No? Okay, so if there are no questions on the Qubit, we can have a 10-minute break. And I will we will finish the class talking about how to submit the library. So I will show you how to calculate the finite concentration and how to pull your sample for sequencing, okay? So let's meet again at 3:53. Okay, yeah, go ahead, Elon.
I'll make an announcement when everybody comes back from break in 5 minutes.
Oh, 3:53, the 10-minute break.
15 or whatever. When you guys get back from break, I'll make an announcement.
43.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so we now have the information about the concentration coming from the qubit measurement. And we also have the average size of our fragment, and that's coming from the final check at the TapeStation. So with these two information, what we can do now is calculate the molarity. So we have two options here. You can use this website, and this is the page that comes from this website here. And you can just type in your numbers. So let's say size is 0.3. So it's 0.3 because the TapeStation is giving you the measurement in base pair. So if it's 300 base pair, it's going to be 0.3 kilobases. And then you can write down the concentration. So for example, here it's 21 nanogram in 1 microliter. And according to this two, my final molarity is 107.86 nanomolar, okay? Or you can use the following formula to calculate your molarity. So the molarity will be the concentration in nanogram per microliter multiplied by 10 to 6 and divided by 660 times the average of the average size of your library, okay? Okay, so let's try to calculate the molarity for sample number 2. Okay, so sample number 1 is 41.9 nanogram per microliter. That's the average size, 426 base pair. And that's the molarity, 149. So if the DNA number 2 is 43.3 nanogram per microliter, and the size, the average size of my library is 379. What's the concentration in nanomolar of my second sample according to this formula here? So it's concentration multiplied 10 to 6 divided by 660 times the average. The average size. So what's the molarity? Anyone wants to try to calculate that and share? Class. One. You can type it in the chat if you want to try to calculate it. Okay, let's also say that if you calculate the molarity manually, it can be slightly different from what you get from the website, not that different, like maybe instead of 149, you have 148. This is just because 660, it's not, it's the weight of 1 mole for the base pair, but it's just an is not exactly 660, so it's just round to 660. Okay. Okay, so that's according to this formula here, it will be 173. So as I can see, 176. So I didn't try that on the website, but probably that was okay. Yeah. So there was I was telling you before. So if you measure the molarity with the website, can be slightly different. So instead of 173 coming from this formula, it will be 176. Okay, but I mean 73, 76 is not making like a huge difference. Of course, you have to measure the molarity with the same exact approach. Okay, so don't measure the molarity with different approaches and then merging them together. Okay. Okay, so once you have the molarity, you can now pull your samples together for sequencing. Okay, so we were talking about the multiplexing, samples multiplexing. So we don't want, of course, to sequence one sample one lane. We want to pull the samples together for sequencing. And in order to finally obtain the same number of reads for each sample, there needs to be at same concentration. Okay, so that's why the molarity is so important. So one strategy is to dilute your sample. So for sequencing, you need to dilute your sample to 10 nanomolar using a sequencing solution. So sequencing solution is just EB buffer, elution buffer, the same we use for the bit spirit, plus 0.1% of twin. And that's the 10 nanomolar is the final concentration the sequencing core is asking for. Okay, so this is our the final concentration we want. So once we have our final library and we measure the concentration at the qubit, the average size, and we know the molarity, we can dilute each sample to be 10 nanomolar and then put same volume for each of them, each of the dilution in a final pool. So of course, if each sample is 10 nanomolar and I'm going to take 2 microliters from each of them, so it's same molarity, my final tube will be same molarity. I'm not diluting anything, okay? They have the same exact molarity. So since I put the same volume for each of them, the molarity will stay the same. How to dilute the sample? So it's usually better to pipette at least 2 microliters of your final library. So now we just need to calculate the volume of EB buffer we need to obtain the 10 nanomolar. Okay. So for DNA number 1, it will be 2 multiplied by 109 49 is the molarity for my sample 1 divided by the molarity I want, it's 10 nanomolar, minus 2, 2 it's the volume I'm taking from my final DNA, okay, final library. So 27.8 will be the volume of EB buffer I need to add in order to obtain a mixture concentrated 10 nanomolar. So it's 2 microliter of DNA1 final library plus 27.8 microliter of sequencing solution. Any of you want to try to calculate the volume of sequencing solution I need to dilute sample number 2? Okay. Yes, 32.6. Exactly. Okay, so once we diluted everything, we made the dilution to be 10 nanomolar, and we put same volume for each of them. We have our final tool ready for sequencing. Any question? I'm gonna share the link for the Google form for attendance. So there is no quiz today, just write down your name so I can have the attendance here. And then I just want to share with you the resources we have available. The resources we offer except this workshop for library prep. So we offer library preparation for free. Free means, I mean, you still need to provide the reagents and consumables for the library prep. We are not providing the kit itself, but I can prepare a library for your project in form of collaboration. So if you need help with the library preps, please contact Dr. Pellegrini, and this is the email. If you want to use the sonicator, the Bioraptor I show you today, you can email me or Mila, and here are our emails. For TapeStation, please email me. If you want to any suggestion with your sorry, let me share them. Okay, here you go. Okay, so if you want help with the Bioraptor, email me or Mila. TapeStation, email me. If you want help with library prep, contact Dr. Pellegrini, or if you want suggestion or help solving problems with your library prep, you can email me and we can even meet and talk about it. And we also have a liquid handler. Is this instrument in the picture here? So these instruments allow you to prepare up to 96 samples together. Right now we have the oligo-DT capture RNA-seq library prep available with the, on this instrument. So if you want to perform RNA-seq library prep with good quality RNA using a messenger RNA poly-A capture approach, and you have hundreds of samples, we have this instrument available, okay? And for who is taking this class for credits, I'm gonna send you a post-class questionnaire, 10 questions, as I told you in the first day of this workshop. We also had this mini quiz together with the attendance, so the Google form I share with you. If you fail any of the 10 questions, I can use the Google form to, increase the points for your final quiz. And then you can please write a report, and you can choose between what you saw today, so about the DNA library prep, or if you don't like the DNA, you can still describe how the RNA library prep work. So please do not just list the volume of the reagents we need. I don't care about the exact protocol, because there are hundreds of protocols available, and they change for each kit. So I don't really care about the specific volumes. Please just list the main step in the library prep and what's the goal of each step, and just 2-3 lanes, just comment on the different step of the library prep, okay? And the deadline for the assignment is next week, Friday next week. But of course, I'm available to, if you need help, I can also send you an example of the assignment. So if you need help, please let me know. Okay, so it's everything for today, and thank you for attending this class. I know it's not as an in-person class, and especially for my workshop, the third day, the virtual lab experience is not like an in-person experience.